Hello everyone, I am back once again with a new video, and this one's going to be a bit of an update to the old Ramble series. There's going to be a bit of a format change with doing away with the old intro and just sort of jumping straight into it because I feel like y'all would want to hear me ramble rather than listen to some Nintendo music for the intro, I guess. Also just using footage that I've recorded for background stuff because I don't want you guys to look at a blank screen anymore, or a dark background or whatever. And there is going to be slight lack of pop-up visuals because I generally do want to pump these videos out if I ever have the chance. And just sort of something small I could make while also talking about life experiences to, keep things going, I guess. Whatever. So, recently the Winnipeg Rail fan made a whole video talking about why passenger trains in Canada sucked. And it generally reminded me of my own experiences with Via Rail. Now, beforehand, I've never ridden Via Rail before because I primarily lived locally in the area before I moved, and I didn't need to go as far anyways. And my family just resorted to driving wherever we had to go where the train went. However, when I moved into college, starting my first year, I took the train back to see family on occasion. And even when I moved places, the Via train did go up to there. And my experience with Via Rail have more or less been a mixed bag. I'm pretty sure most of y'all were aware of my first experience, which was on my Thanksgiving vlog. I ended up taking the Via train from London, to which my college was at, all the way down to Toronto, Ontario, to where my family would be staying. Now, back then, the distance was a bit more longer, not to mention it required a lot more stops on a busy corridor, so the prices were rather high up. I think they were in the 80s or 90s. Yeah, these train tickets are not really that cheap. I mean, compared to anywhere else in the world where a similar distance can probably charge you less, it kind of makes me envy other countries' rail networks, and I do understand why our North American rail system generally sucks when it comes to passenger trains. But we're not going to talk about history stuff here. We're here to talk about my experiences with Via Rail. Anyways, I did go another time in November for when I was spending one more week before, my family moved out. Again, it was the same experience, riding in an old 1940s coach. Still surprising they keep those things in revenue service. Although I didn't get off at the terminus station and instead got off at a station along the route. I should have chosen one that was more direct closely to the highway rather than one that was slightly off course, but it was whatever. And then came in December. By that point, I moved to a house that was more close to the family by the US border. So think along the lines of Port Huron or Sarnia. A benefit from this was that the train ticket only costed a mere $26 compared to the roughly $80 to $90 for the other journeys. Only having one stop was also a plus, although it came at the cost of, traveling at night, so most times I'd be staring into the blank void while the train was passing through in the country. These new experiences overall went without events, there was very hardly a delay or such, but most times it was just a quick journey, and just riding the train in general was just a fun experience, compared to driving an hour on a highway which was mostly flat. Another sad thing was that the train gets to the station at roughly 9 p.m., so it was pretty much during the darker hours of the day, which is unfortunate. Now that I covered a good majority of the positive experiences, now let's cover into some of the worst experiences I've had with Via. The first and honestly the most frustrating happened around the Easter weekend of this year. During that day, I had booked a train ticket back home, and I had plenty of time to spare in downtown, so I just went to a local Wild Wing to get dinner, and I went to the station with plenty of time to spare. It didn't take until the Via train arrived that the station attendee announced that the train would not be continuing on. This was because of a derailment that happened in Sarnia Yard, meaning the train could not use the Y since it was out of access. My main problem was, why didn't they just tell us ahead of time? Let alone just tell anyone that arrived at the station that the train would not be showing up, or, for that matter, emailing us ahead of time that the train would not be continuing on rather than tell us directly when it was fucking arriving. As a result of that, a bus replacement service was planned, but it wouldn't take an hour until it got to the station. I was already pissed off, and I immediately just went back to my dorm to rest. I was picked up and just went back home the next day anyways by car. And also, I did not get my money back for the train ticket, even if it was only $28. I guess I was just too pissed that night to even give a shit about getting my money back, but even to this day, I did not contact Via Rail about the $26 I got, and honestly, I do not really give a fuck about it. The second experience happened a month later when I was on my way to Anime North of this year. For context, it's a yearly anime event that happens in the Greater Toronto area for weebs, like me. I booked a round-way trip to Brampton and back, as I was going to be spending a night at a friend's house during that time. I arrived at the station as usual with plenty of time to spare, but the sad thing was, the train did not take another hour and a half until it got to the station. And it wasn't because of like freight traffic, because there was only one eastbound freight train that passed by the station before the Via. It was because the crew sort of got in late, and as a result of that, they arrived late on the scene and departed extremely late from the station. Nonetheless, I just chose to shrug it off and I boarded the train. Everything seemed fine going eastbound, and I will admit, traveling along the countryside during the daytime provides a whole other experience. That was until we got to Kitchener, to which we had to sit an hour again at the station because of a GO train that had to get in. And given that most of the Guelph sub is single track, meaning that there's very few places to pull over and wait. So as a result of that, we were just sort of stuck at the station until the GO train arrived. Normally, this Via train gets in at roughly around 12 to 1 p.m., but I didn't get to the station until 3:40 p.m., give or take. Fast forward a day later, I had rescheduled my train ticket to go back on the same day as the convention, seeing as I wrapped up. Believe it or not, the train was an hour late arriving into Brampton. Yeah, I know, it was genuinely frustrating. Aside from that, it was actually a pretty decent experience. Traveling along as the sun's going down was honestly such an eye-catching experience. That was until we left London. For context, the line that goes from London, Ontario to Sarnia, Ontario is primarily single track, with very few double track and sidings for the line. There used to be a line where it would run along the lake all the way down to Stratford. However, they ripped that line up by the 60s, and as a result of that, we're kind of stuck in a single track situation. I guess sort of overall to save traffic. Why CN chose not to double track this section, I do not know. But it did provide a bit of a detriment, seeing as we had to sit in a siding for roughly, I don't know, an hour or two, just to wait on one freight train, which was taking who knows how long to show up. And even when that arrived, it pretty much was a over 2-hour delay. To say that SIA needs to invest in double tracking their main lines is a severe understatement. In conclusion, Via Rail generally sucks most of the time, and there's very few pleasurable experiences. I know one of them is to travel on the Canadian on my bucket list before they eventually replace the existing fleet, because I'm pretty sure that won't last forever. But aside from that, a few mixed experiences definitely given me a rough impression for Via Rail. But honestly, I understand why people hate it, and I do think that the Canadian government needs to get their heads out of their asses and fix Via Rail as soon as possible. But hey, they probably won't. Nonetheless, what are your experiences of Via Rail, or by extension Amtrak? Let me know in the comments below, as I genuinely want to see some stories you guys have. And I'll see you all in the next video. Take care, folks.